because there was a bullying protocol in place, but no one was following it. So my daughter was previously in the general education classroom and she was doing fine there, which was why I wanted her to ride the regular bus. So the county recommended that she go into a special education classroom, and I was not feeling that, but at the same time, I knew she had lost a lot of time from school and she was kind of behind. So rather than her being embarrassed in front of her peers, I wanted her to have the opportunity to catch up and then mainstream back into the regular general education classroom. It ended up that Elgin Mills was a complete disaster. Instead of handling the bullying issue by following the bullying protocol, the staff was recommending an alternative placement for her. So she was really struggling with these bullies and she needed a break. So because she had an IEP, we looked at all the different non-public options, but there were really no options for her because most of the schools were for students who were on the autism spectrum. She was not on the spectrum. She just needed to catch up. So a really unique program called Pathways was recommended. And it was really kind of cool because she would have her own teacher who would pick her up and they would kind of like go to different sites to do her lessons and whatnot. The only disadvantage to that school was the fact that she did not have the social interaction. And at first I was like, oh, well, that's a good thing because she needed to catch up and she didn't need to be so focused on all of her bullies, but she was not getting the social interaction that was on her IEP. So she stayed in this program for 2 years and then she just really wanted to experience being a real high school student in a real high school, which I totally understood. So fast forwarding to the 2021-2022 school year, this was the year that she re-entered the public school system, but at the same time, she was a dual enrollee, still attending the Pathway School to do her main courses and doing electives at Howard High School. So the one stipulation that I had was that everything had to be in place for her so that she would be able to receive the proper services while she was at this school, because this was the first time that she was actually refacing her bullies. And you know, everyone is older and a little bit more mature. I didn't anticipate her having too much of a problem, but you never know. So I wanted to make sure that was in place for her as a safeguard. So she was supposed to be getting like social and emotional support, some behavioral support. And of course, because she had an IEP in general, any educational needs that she needed at that time, she would receive. And the counseling was a really big part of that. So she started off great. She was a varsity cheerleader and she was so excited because now she was finally popular and she was really doing well. So there were some kids who were kind of jealous of her because she was on varsity and they weren't. And a lot of stuff just transpired. So during that school year, the bullying recurred and she ended up getting assaulted by a peer. She sustained a concussion, ended up having to stop cheer for a while. It was just a big mess. I called an emergency meeting because I felt like there needed to be more supports for her in place because I didn't understand what was going on and why, how all this stuff was happening. There was like disciplinary action with suspension and all this stuff was happening. So I thought it would be a good idea, especially after that school year, to have a functional behavior assessment done to see where there were any deficits that, we needed to work on at that time and what was needed so we could help her during that next school year for sure. I signed the document for her to have the functional behavior assessment. So her annual review was rolling around that August, which ended up being delayed about 60 days or more until October 13th. So after the holidays, I noticed she started to display some, really risky behaviors that were not typical for her. And I had a high index of suspicion that something was going on, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So then the school reported to me that she was skipping class. So I was wondering, okay, is this like avoidance where, typically she had a flash pass where if she was under stress, she could just take a walk or whatever. So she had gotten accepted into the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. So I went into my email to pull her IEP to let them know that she had a history of an IEP and to see how they could accommodate her. When I was looking for the IEP, I could not find it. And this was around the same time I was looking for my son's IEP and neither IEP was in my email. That was really weird because it's normally there and I don't really go searching for it unless I absolutely needed it. So I needed it. So I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just sent an email to the special education department and said, hey, I need a copy of, both of the kids' IEP. It took a little bit longer than expected, but I did get it. So when I went through the IEP, I was specifically looking for the functional behavior assessment because she was demonstrating these new and risky behaviors. So it wasn't there. For some reason, I thought it was done. When I asked about it, come to find out the functional behavior assessment was never done. So I'm like, what the heck? So because her annual review was delayed by 2 months, I forgot to ask about the functional behavior assessment, which was to be done that summer. So I had filed a Maryland State Department of Education complaint on behalf of my daughter because she did not have an IEP on file for 2 years. And only because I requested the IEP in March to prepare it for the University of Maryland did I realize there was no IEP. So when I asked Howard High for a copy of the IEP from the 21-22 school year, they did not have one on file. Then when I asked for the 22-23 school year, they still did not have one on file. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. We had an IEP meeting, so why is there no IEP? So according to the principal at that time, Mr. Novak, he said because they use a special type of system to store the IEPs and she was a dual enrollee, they did not have her information on record. So my daughter's at this school, refacing her bullies for the first time with no services provided from the high school. She had the services at the non-public school, but she did not have the services where she really needed it at this high school. That was one of the stipulations that I made before she even re-entered back into the public school system, that she had counseling, social emotional services, and behavior support when she went back into this school. So come to find out, she never had any of those supports. She was accused of cutting class when technically on her IEP, there was a accommodation for her to be able to have a flash pass to move out of her classroom if needed when she was in those moments of stress and anxiety. They didn't have any of that information because there was no IEP on file. I spoke with all of her teachers from the first school year and from the second school year at that public high school, and none of them were aware that she had an IEP. So in July 2023, I received the final state complaint. The state found that there were multiple violations by Howard County, including the fact that she did not have the functional behavior assessment completed and did not have an IEP on file. Now, the state only would look at the 22-23 school year because they would only go 1 year back. But my complaint was submitted in April of 2023. So technically, they were supposed to go back to April 2022. They would not do that. Instead, her complaint was dated starting the beginning of the 2022 school year. But she still had an IEP in full effect when that state complaint was submitted, and the state would not honor it, which was really insane because an IEP is a continuum. It's not like you could just stop an IEP in the middle of the school year and just keep it moving. So this was for the 2021 to 2022 school year, and they would not acknowledge it. My daughter was really excited about going to college and getting that whole college experience, but she was not very confident about going because a lot of things had happened during that whole bullying season, and she really had fell behind academically. So she didn't think that she would be able to keep up. The University of Maryland Eastern Shore had what they call a bridge program, and this bridge program would allow students who had a pending application to be accepted into the university to come to the school early for a summer enrichment program. So even though her status wasn't pending and she was actually accepted into the university, I wanted her to still go because I knew academically she could benefit from this program. She had some compensatory hours that were provided to her by the special education department due to COVID. So I requested that she be able to use those compensatory hours towards paying for that program. The process to even get those compensatory hours from the special education department was just a headache all by itself, but they agreed to pay for it. So I sent the special education department an email requesting the balance of her compensatory hours. Even though she had never used any of the hours, I just wanted to be assured that the whole balance would be covered. By this time, I had already submitted my state complaint. So I'm waiting and waiting for a response regarding the hours for the compensatory services, and no one's responding. So finally, I received a response, but I had only asked for the balance of her compensatory hours. I received this 4-page settlement agreement, Howard County versus me.